Welcome, everyone. How are you? Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Arvin Education Center. My name is David Bazanis. I'm with the Oldham Chamber and Economic Development Office, and we're excited to have you guys here today as we launch the first of our new series called OCED Talks, which is kind of a play on the TED Talks videos and things that circulate the internet, if you're not familiar with those. The idea is that we have people from various backgrounds come talk about important topics of the day, and our topic of the day is the future of workforce, which is in our world of chamber business and economic development is a significant, it's the lead asset for any community and building and creating new jobs is what type of workforce that you have. And so today we have a great program, a wonderful, talented group of panelists to talk about this issue from various sources and areas of expertise. So we hope you have a good time, and we're going to start off first by, I want to thank our sponsor, Baptist Health LaGrange, has been an investor in our chamber for many years and a very important part of this community and its growth over the years. And it's programs like these we would not be able to have without Baptist investment. So I want to thank our team at Baptist for all their contributions. And I want to bring up to the dais, the podium here, an HR manager from Baptist, Lindsay Higginbotham.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lindsay Higginbotham, Human Resources Manager from Baptist Health. Baptist Health LaGrange is a proud partner with the Oldham County Chamber, and we're very excited to be here sponsoring today's OCED Talks. So thank you for being here. I just wanted to share a little bit about Baptist Health LaGrange today. We really believe in creating a strong workforce and feel as though this is what helps us differentiate and set us apart from our competitors. So much so that we have been recognized by the American Nurses Credentialing Center, or ANCC, for those of you that may be familiar with healthcare, for creating a work environment that empowers and engages our nurses and nursing staff. In addition to that, I'd like to also share that Baptist Health as an organization has received worldwide recognition with the ANCC, as well as being the only healthcare system to have all of their hospitals receive this credential. We're very, very proud to announce that and to share that with everyone. Baptist Health LaGrange has also been named a best places to work in recent years, as has Baptist Health as a system, which is another interesting fact about Baptist Health LaGrange that we're very proud of. So again, I wanted to welcome everyone today. Thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here and look forward to a great discussion.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Also, I want to acknowledge a few people that have joined us today. Our board chair, Christy Paulin, is here from Fastline Media Group. Thank you, Christy, for being here. And also, we have Superintendent Schultz that's here in the back. Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you for hosting this event here. That's right. That's okay. I understand. It's obligatory clapping for Matt. That's great. This is a very important topic, and as many of you know, Oldham County is very fortunate to have a lot of resources in our community. We're the healthiest, wealthiest, and highest educated population in the entire state of Kentucky. Not that that doesn't put us in a position of having challenges that we have to overcome, and that also there are people in our community that are in need of resources to be able to skill up. They are in need of employment, and one of the things we're trying to do as we grow this community is grow the number of businesses that are here. And one of the number one attraction tools that we can have is the quality of our workforce and the investment that we make here locally in training the next workforce groups who come through. With obviously the Rawlings Group is moved out here in 2007 with 500 employees and currently has over 1,500. So they've added 1,000 jobs in a very short amount of time, and they're on track to add another 500 within the next 2 years. It's something we're very excited about. But along with that type of growth also comes the need for a skilled workforce, for IT professionals, for people with skill sets that are very specific. And so in addition to being able to help them be able to grow here in our community and provide those good quality jobs that contribute to our tax base, we also have a pretty significant industrial base as well, from companies like Northland Corp, Parts Unlimited, Treehouse Brand Foods, which was formerly Conagra, has significant footprint here and offers good quality jobs to about for the population that stays within Oldham County during the day and the 9,000 people that we import every day from our surrounding communities. So we hope to have a good, fruitful conversation, and to do that, we're going to start. I'm going to introduce our first speaker from Greater Louisville, Inc. Christine Tarquinio is the Director of Talent Attraction, and she is in charge of the Live in Lieu initiative at GLI, which is responsible for recruiting new workforce to our region. So please help me welcome Christine Tarquinio.
Hi, everybody. So my job at Greater Louisville, Inc. is to bring 38,000 new residents to Greater Louisville by 2020. For about the past 2 decades, we've realized that Greater Louisville, and when I speak about Greater Louisville, I'm talking about 5 counties in Indiana and 10 counties in Kentucky. For about the past 2 decades, Greater Louisville has been at the top of the bottom third of growth relative to our peer cities. And that is not a top that we want to be at. That is not sustainable for growth. We're getting our lunch handed to us by Charlotte and Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Nashville. And so in looking at that, the leadership at GLI and throughout the community decided we have to put a stop to this bleeding. We have to do something to grow more so that we can be competitive with our peer cities, so that we can support the workforce that will be needed in the future. When we look at what rapid job growth is going to be between now and 2026, these are the top job codes that are projected to grow the most. You'll see a lot of them that fit into the health and wellness, aging care market with an aging population, like nurses, personal financial advisors, financial managers. But what you don't see in there specifically called out that much, other than software and app developers, is tech talent, because tech talent is industry agnostic. So that presents a little bit of a challenge. Dave mentioned earlier about Rawlings looking for tech talent. That is not uncommon. Tech talent is incredibly difficult to find. Right now, their unemployment rate as an industry is about 2.3%, and that is significantly lower than Greater Louisville's unemployment rate, which is 4.2% currently. So at a kind of a 50,000-foot view, our Live in Lieu initiative was geared at a 4-year talent attraction and retention program aimed at attracting and retaining that working age population that's 25 to 54. We are looking at 38,000 person increase in the region, with hopefully at least 18,000 of those having an associate's degree or higher. So the idea is we need to bring in non-degree talent, because we have industry that supports that, and we also need to bring in degree talent so that we can help to raise the level of education in Greater Louisville. In 2017, we did some research of about a little under 900 respondents who had recently moved or who were considering a move. And we asked them, what motivated you to move? And if you moved and you liked it, why'd you stay? If you moved and you left, why'd you leave? The idea was to kind of give us the information that we needed to go out and put some messaging together that really resonated with the people that we're trying to attract. We looked at it in 2 different demographic breakdowns, 25 to 34 and 35 to 54, thinking that those would be vastly different, that somebody who's 25 and somebody who's 45 would have completely different perspectives. And we were actually really pleased to discover that there was a lot of similarity there. The availability of good jobs and business opportunities, the ability to make a difference, and then the suitability for raising a family were common among both sets. So we identified those as our main value proposition when we started to think about what our messaging strategy would be to try and target these groups and bring them to Greater Louisville. So our initiative is a multi-pronged initiative. We are utilizing a number of tools to try and really connect with the population outside of our region and bring them here. We started with a brand refresh. Our initial brand was developed in-house. It had the skyline of Louisville, and it just really didn't work quite as well when you made it small. You couldn't really read Louisville very much. And so we issued an RFP and contracted with an ad agency who did a brand refresh for us. We reskinned our website in July and added a job board. That's one thing that was missing from our original website. So now, if you have any open positions in our region, again, 5 counties in Indiana and 10 counties in Kentucky, we can post your open positions on our job board. It scrubs from 25 of the top job boards in the United States and then posts the regionally available positions only. So it is a kind of a one-stop shop, we hope, for all of the availability of open positions in the region. We also, in August, launched a regional marketing campaign. When we looked at the areas that we knew were the best to draw talent from, and then we layered on the jobs that we knew were projected to grow the most between now and 2026, it kicked out a list of about 12 different regions where we identified that they had more of that talent than we had. So those were potential places where we could steal talent from. And with a limited budget, because we're a nonprofit, an investor-funded agency, we really had to make some decisions about what we were going to try and target. Were we going to look at targeting just one specific geographical area, or we were going to look at targeting several different areas and maybe just 1 or 2 specific job codes? Ultimately, we decided to focus on trying to attract nursing and tech talent in this first go-round, because there are shortages that exist in both of those right now, and also because I think we have a compelling story there. So we layered in the location, the nursing and tech talent, and where we pay comparatively well as opposed to the other locations. And those became the primary cities that we targeted with our advertising campaign. We are targeting select cities in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Our campaign launched on August 13th and will end the end of next week in December. It is a primarily digital campaign. I will not bore you with all of the different types of digital ads that we have, but everything drives back to liveinlieu.com/work, which is our job board, or to our social channels. This is just a sample of some of the creative that was developed. So we started, excuse me, we started with the brand refresh, then we went on to launch the marketing campaign, and while all of that was going on, we knew that employers have a role in making sure that we're recruiting talent to the region as well. So we've had a significant initiative to go out and speak with employers. And I went out and actually spoke with Rawlings a couple of weeks ago to talk about some of the assets that we have that can help them recruit IT talent. I'm happy to come out and speak to any of your organizations, to your HR managers, to your CEOs, whoever the person is who's trying to recruit talent. What we heard from our employers as we've been talking to them is, I really don't have a problem selling my company. My company's great. And I don't have a problem selling the job. My jobs are plentiful. But I don't know how to sell the region. I don't really know what matters to people, and I don't have the time or the resources to go researching all of that information. And so we're taking that project on. If you go to liveinlieu.com and you click on the Employer Toolkit tab, I'm going to say maybe in the next 2 weeks. Right now we have a few limited resources on there, but we're currently drafting all kinds of information to post there for the future. Information on neighborhoods, on attractions, on the culinary scene. We're looking to try and get some information on just some blocking and tackling stuff, like who do I call for trash pickup? Right now we're loading some of that information for Jefferson County, but I beseech anyone in here, if you have information that you think would be a good fit for Oldham County. We want all of our counties represented on this website, because Oldham County is a very desirable place, not just to do business, but also to live. And we want to be able to provide that information. So when I go and talk to the employers, I talk to them about the website, of course. I talk to them about the job board and their ability to post on the job board. We also have a great social media presence right now. We started with, I think, maybe 150 followers in March, and we're on Facebook right now about 4,600, Instagram just under 2,000, so we're growing pretty rapidly. We also have a social campaign called #Working Wednesdays. So if you have a job position that you want to highlight on our social channels, we'll be happy to do that for you on Wednesdays. And you can just get with me and I'll send you all the information. And then our goal at the end of it is really to have our employers link to Live and Lose so that if they have a recruiting page or if they have a page that talks about the region, they can link to Live and Lose and anybody who's interested can go directly to our site. This is a sample of some of the toolkit materials that we're developing. But that falls kind of on my plate as well, and so it's a little slow going. This is a really great program that we piloted this year. It's called City Champs. They're our brand ambassadors. This is a group of 21 people who were trained by LMPD, by the Center for Neighborhoods, JCPS, to really learn how to respond to questions that people who are new or who are considering a move to Greater Louisville might have. Would love to have representation from all of the counties on City Champs. I know May is going to be a City Champ in our next, in our 2019 phase that launches probably in January. But if you go to liveandlou.com and you click on City Champs and you're being recruited by somebody to move to the region and you're not entirely sure, you know, what the city's like, or if you have just moved here, and you're not exactly sure how to fit in, let's say you're a rock climber, but you don't know what the rock climbing industry or community is like in Greater Louisville, you can go to liveandlou.com. You can click on Bailey's information. She shows you that all of her interests include rock climbing. You can send her an email or reach out to her on Twitter or whatever her preferred method of contact is, and just say, hey, I'm new. Can you help me figure out how I fit? Because what we learned from our research is, shockingly, people leave if they don't feel like they fit well within the city. So this is a really high-touch asset that we have, but one that really helps to deepen that communication. I had somebody reach out to me yesterday who is considering Louisville as their new home. They're currently in Tennessee, and she had some questions about how to navigate JCPS. I have 3 kids in JCPS, and so I was able to kind of provide that information for her. And she's now coming this weekend to take a look at the city. So we have the brand refresh, we have employer outreach, the marketing campaign, the toolkit, City Champs, and then we can't forget about the universities and making sure that we're working that education pipeline to try and attract talent to the region as well. This year we spent some time going out and talking to universities and attending career fairs. Probably not a good fit for us moving into 2019. A trend that we noticed at the career fairs that might be beneficial for all the employers in the room is that people are setting interviews when they're going to career fairs. That there is a talent shortage, that is very real, and so potential employees are going looking to make a decision while they're there on who their next employer is going to be and really get to know them. And I'm selling a region. I don't really have any employers and I don't really have any job interviews that I can give them. So I think in 2019 we'll be pivoting to more outreach to the career service offices and the alumni service offices, and actually bringing people from outside of the region in here, connecting them with employers like you so that they can see we have a ton of opportunity in this region for your graduates. Universities are considered successful based on the number of students that they place, and we have currently about 14,000 open jobs in the MSA right now, and an unemployment rate of 4.2%. There's a ton of opportunity here, so we just need to have the ability to showcase that and communicate that. And then kind of our last bit of our marketing efforts in this year has been some supplemental outreach. During Derby, when we had an influx of visitors in the region, we polygoned about 90 different hotels and Churchill Downs and geofenced those and sent digital ads to people's mobile devices while they were there. Kind of ping their phone so that we're in their phone. I know it's a little creepy, sorry. And then if they left on Sunday and their geographical location was more than 150 miles away from the region, we continued to serve them ads saying, we know you had a great visit, why don't you consider here moving for life? We replicated that when Ironman came in, when the Endeavor Conference came in. We'll be doing that with some of the larger conventions and concerts at the Yum Center. So thank you for getting rid of net neutrality. But we can really get into the phones and minds and hearts and devices of all kinds of great talent. And the goal is just to continually hit them with the message from the employers, from the website, from the ad campaign, from the universities, from the times that they come to visit here, so that they understand that we want them, that there's opportunity here, and that they should live and live. Last thing. We do our best to try and showcase as much from our regional partners as we can on our social channels and on our website. If you have any information, if you would like us to partner with you and highlight your business, anything cool that you're doing, if you have any ideas, please reach out to me. We want to get as many people as we can involved in the job board, involved in our social content, involved in Become a City Champ, and really just kind of help us showcase what every county in our region is doing. I can't, I'm doing my best to get out to all of the counties with regularity, but I'm not living there day in and day out. And so we really are going to rely on our partners to help us seed the website, seed that information. So if you'd like to volunteer, if you'd like to become a city champ, please reach out to me. That's it.
All right, wonderful. And I should say also, for those of you who are not do not know about this, Greater Louisville Inc. has gone through a lot of changes over the years, and one of the things that they have done over the last several years was convert into a regional economic development organization. In addition to the chamber services they provide the City of Louisville, but the City of Louisville has its own economic development organization in Louisville Forward, and Greater Louisville Inc. is filling the gaps and trying to help the entire region. So it's a 15-county partnership. Our very own Dina Karam is in charge of that effort, and I should say that some of the resources that they have provided, in addition to the work that Christine's doing, has been very substantial to smaller organizations like ours, and especially when you get out into some of the more rural areas where they don't have as many resources as we're fortunate to have. When it comes in terms of data and things to help recruit business, things like these efforts, it helps make us all more nimble. So this has truly become a real regional partnership where we're collectively working together to try to bring a new business. So that being said, I'll introduce our next panelist, the Executive Director from Kentuckiana Works, Michael Gritton.
Couldn't find my watch this morning, so I'm just turning on my timer so I don't go over the time. So I want to thank David, who's a board member of Kentuckiana Works. I want to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do, and then hopefully this group is small enough we can have lots of conversation this afternoon about workforce writ large. Congress invests in workforce development in a lot of different ways depending on how you define it. If you think of it as helping people go back to college, Pell Grants count as workforce development funds. If you think of what goes on at Oldham County schools, they invest in at least some schools through laws at the federal level. The primary way they invest in workforce development to help adults or disconnected youth is through a law called the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and that law requires the creation of local boards. So in Kentucky, there are 10 boards. Kentuckiana Works is one of those boards. David is a board member. There are 25 members on that board. Superintendent Hazelton used to be a member of the board, and we have a 7-county board that represents Louisville and the 6 counties around it. And I'm the executive director to that board, and we've got a professional staff of about 20 people, right? This year we're going to spend about $14 million, mostly taxpayer money, mostly federal. About 10% of that comes from the city of Louisville for us to do specific things in the city that we can talk more about in a minute. But just so you get a scale of what we're doing, we're cobbling together funding streams from a lot of different places to try to tackle workforce challenges to the extent that we can with those funding streams, right? So one big picture thing we do is we run programmatic things that try to help address workforce challenges. So all across the country, you will find career centers that are funded by taxpayer dollars. So we oversee these things called Kentucky Career Centers. There used to be a lot of them across the state. Now there are a lot fewer of them, right? But those career centers are open to anybody. They can walk through the door. They can get help finding a job. They can get help putting together a resume. And sometimes they may need additional help to get to the kind of job that they need or want. If they do, they're sometimes eligible for job training scholarships depending on funding availability. right? So in years past, we've spent millions of dollars to give people training scholarships to go back and become a healthcare person, go to work at Baptist, that sort of thing, right? But as federal money has been shrinking, we've got less money to train people than we used to have. So from the peak in the mid-1970s, the federal investment in this kind of workforce development is down by 75% in real terms. 75, not 5, 75, right? Just since 1999, it's down by 33%. Now, you all are mostly business people, and everybody in business is trying to do more with less, and I totally get that, and we're trying to do more with less as well. But one of the things we can talk more about as we get along into these conversations is these workforce challenges are big and real, and they tend to be messy to solve because it's human beings that you're working with. There's no app or technology solution that makes it easy to solve. We know how to help people get trained and get jobs and go to work and stay working, right? But it tends to take money to do it, and the federal government is slowly but surely disinvesting from that work, right? And so then you must say to yourself, well, that's probably true, Mike, but the state of Kentucky must be helping you, right? And it turns out the state of Kentucky spends $0 on workforce development through the workforce boards. Now again, to be fair to the governor and the legislature, they do spend money on community colleges and higher ed, and they spend lots of money on the K-12 system, right? And so they may think to themselves, that's how we address workforce development. But for all of the adults who are out there who are underskilled and trying to go back to work or may get laid off and trying to figure out how to reinvent themselves, right? The only real investment the state is making is through these things called work-ready scholarships at the community college level, which are pretty hard to access and pretty complicated at the moment. So again, we can circle back about that if you want. So let me just make sure you know a couple things. We run adult career centers. We also run something called the Kentucky Youth Career Center, which is targeting 18 to 24-year-olds who didn't successfully transition after high school or who didn't get a degree in the first place. Renee Walters from Goodwill runs that program for us very, very ably across the 6 counties out here in the region. There's a different provider that does that work in Jefferson County. What you hear in this, Congress asks us to do this work through contractors, not to do it directly. Right? So I can name the contractor for each of the things I'm describing. We don't do the work, we oversee the people that do the work, hold them accountable, set performance targets, just like you all do in business. Make sense? We help people get off welfare and into real jobs. Last year, Goodwill has been doing this work with us as a partner for 10 years. Last year, over 400 people got off welfare and into real jobs because of that work. We're helping people get off of food stamps and into real work. That's new work we took on last year. We never had the food stamp. But just so you get an idea of what my job is like and what David's job is like as a board member trying to oversee it, each of these things is a different funding stream that comes from a different part of the federal government. Each of them have its own set of rules, regulations, requirements, people that can get me in trouble, mistakes I can make that can get me to go to jail. It's complicated, right? Because food stamps not the same as TANF. TANF is not the same thing as Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act, right? And then we also get money from the Department of Education. We run a college access center in Louisville that serves adults from across the region who are looking to try to go back to school and need help filling out the FAFSA, figuring out what kind of school to go to, all that sort of thing, right? We run a really cool program called Code Louisville. We got a $3 million federal grant. We've helped 1,000 people raise their tech skills, and more than 300 of them have now gotten tech jobs or promotions at an average wage of over $40,000 a year, right? When President Obama came to Louisville, the only time he came in the 8 years he was president, he came and did this big press event that was celebrating the early success of Code Louisville, right? So we know how to do this stuff, and we're doing cool stuff, but it's pretty hard to make some of this stuff happen, right, without funding. Now, the other thing to make David's job even harder as a board member is not only are we asking the board to help oversee programmatic initiatives that are serving all these different challenged populations. By the way, those programs together last year helped over 1,800 people find jobs, and if you multiply those people by the average wage and assume they all worked full time, we made a $61 million payroll impact in 1 year, right? Now, I know not all of them work full time, so my number's probably off a little, but my only point is if we spent 14 and we created 61 million in value in 1 year, the return on investment of this work is obvious. You with me? But the other thing we're challenging David, and Congress really has challenged board members like David to do, is to also not just be overseeing programs, but to try to provide leadership around career pathways across the region, right? So part of what we also now have is a 2-person shop that does labor market intelligence, and we're trying to give better information and products to superintendents like Superintendent Schultz and the people that work in the schools, and we're trying to ultimately get that out to people like you all. Because you may get questions from kids you know, or somebody in the neighborhood, or somebody in your family at the family reunion. What do you know about this job? What do you know about this career, right? If you learn nothing else from me today other than this, write down careercalculator.org. And when you get a chance, go to the website. You can even do it on your phone while you're sitting here. We've now built a product that will give you in real time information about jobs and occupations in the 12-county area using just 12-county data, right? 5 in southern Indiana and 7 here. So David and I go to these kinds of meetings where everyone wants to tell kids now they don't need to go to college, right? But the data is absolutely clear. The higher up you go in education, the less likely you are to be unemployed, right? So that's one big important thing. But a lot of people that start to talk about that kind of stuff also want to talk about these phantom $100,000 welders. Oh, you know, you go into welding, you're going to make $100,000. You pull up welder on the Occupational Outlook, and you'll see that the median wage for people in my area, this 12-county area, is about $35,000, $36,000 a year, right? And the person at the 90th percentile is making about $50,000. So if you can find a $100,000 welder, they are at the very 0.01 of the data in our region. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's pretty unlikely. So if you're advising kids, don't tell them to go get a welding job if you're trying to help them get $100,000 a year. And in fact, on that occupational, on the career calculator, you can search by the amount of money you want somebody to make. And if you type in $100,000, welder doesn't pop up, right? But software developers do, right? And some of these other healthcare professions do. So again, I don't want to take too long, but my basic point is we are trying to solve workforce challenges. One of the things we're doing now is reaching back to the high schools in particular and the kind of stuff that's happening here at the Arvin Center so that kids are getting better information and better exposure to the kinds of things they can start to learn in high school so that if they want to come out of high school and just go to work or go to work as a path to higher ed, they're coming out with skills that they're not coming out of, they're not coming out with now by and large, right? But also, we're trying to break down this old idea back when I was in high school in the 70s or my dad in the 40s and 50s when you chose either a vocational path or a college path, right? Now what we're trying to do is have kids get this kind of exposure so even if you're going to college, you still get some real world experience and exposure when you're in high school. And it turns out for a lot of kids, that makes their learning way more relevant because they start to understand why I'm doing geometry. If you're working on a carpentry project, all of a sudden you realize why they say calculate twice and cut once, right? All that sort of stuff. So anyway, I want to stop there because we've got other things to get into. I'm happy to get into more of this conversation. We love partnering with David. We love partnering with the school district. This stuff is really important, but the challenges aren't going away. And with a low unemployment rate, most of the people that are left on the sidelines are really going to need our help to get them into the game. Okay? The last thing I wanted to say is I did just want to acknowledge Lindsay and Baptist. They're great partners of ours. We have a health career center in Louisville. We have a health advisory board that is made up of health employers across the region, southern Indiana, and across Louisville and Oldham County and all that I know you're active in. So we really appreciate what you all do in the community and as a partner. Okay? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. And last but not least, our principal of the Arvin Education Center and the new director of workforce development for the Oldham County School Systems here in Oldham County, Mr. Matt Watkins.
Well, this is not comfortable for me. I'm not a podium guy. I am a teacher. I'm an educator who gets in front of people, in front of kids, and dives in with them and gets into projects and activity and let's go and let's learn and let's build our capacity. So I'm going to just be here for just a short time because I think this would be a very valuable opportunity for us to let you ask questions, excuse me, let you ask questions and kind of just dive into different things. But if I could condense my part of a 7 to 10 minute opportunity to talk to you, the challenge is this. We need you to partner with us and not give up on that work. We need you to do that in the workforce. We need you to do that, excuse me, I did drink water before I walked up here. We need you to do that in the schools and every place that we have students. Our goal here at the Arvin Center is to create things and opportunity for kids that we don't even know what job is even out there yet or what, thank you, May. No, I won't need it. To create opportunities for students and to go ahead and start partnership with industry folks. And it is a real challenge, but I'll tell you, in 2009, 2010, when we went under local control with our Board of Education making some decisions to fund the Career Center of Oldham County, it changed the game for our kids. One, we got to start listening to our kids and our community members and our industry folks, and not just in Oldham County, but around surrounding area in the regional piece. The state does a good job, a great job of trying to put together career and technical centers that have opportunities for kids. But in Oldham County, for us, it wasn't serving our population the way that it could. It wasn't bad when it was in 1980. It was an amazing thing that Dr. Arvin did when he brought this thing here, and then superintendents after that supporting it. But in 2009, 2010, we found that we had quit asking kids, and the things that we were being told to offer from the state were not applying to our kids. And if they're not applying to our kids, how's it going to apply to our workforce if it's not getting there? And so I think the state has done a great job of revamping some of that for the Department of Education around Office of Career and Technical Education, but there's just a lot more work to be done. So for example here, one of our great partners is Baptist Health, along with many other groups in our industry, but we would not have a sports medicine / physical therapy group that meets here every single day. We can't, as a school district, afford to build this building and have the location using taxpayers' money and being good stewards of that money, but that's how this is all funded when you're not run by the state. But if we're going to give those kids that opportunity, we have to have folks like Baptist come alongside and say, we know we're going to need to invest in your kids so that we can have them as a worker, as part of our workforce in the future. And that has been a great partnership. And we're seeing kids now, it's not just a monetary donation, it's investing the time. It's investing the communication and the conversation about what that needs to look like moving forward for the future. If not, suddenly it's 2009, 2010, and you haven't changed since 1980. And next thing you know, you're 30 years in and not gaining any ground on what students need, young adults need, employers need, and what our communities need to be able to be survivable and to have it really be a thriving community. So I'm going to cut it pretty short. There's a lot that I would love to talk to you about. I would love for all of you, feel free. There's a couple business cards on there, our website. You can Google Arvin Education Center. I am always available for that. If you have community members that you can just think of that would like to just sit down and talk, we've started programs from just a conversation at Walmart, conversation at Kroger, that just next thing you know, we're doing it. So there's barriers out there for all of us. Workforce-wise, there's barriers for you guys in the community, in the industries. There's barriers for our kids as to whether they're interested in it or not. But if we have industry that wants it and we have kids that want it, that's all that we need. From there on, we can knock down those barriers. So I'm going to sit down and let us get to questions, comments, confusion, bewilderment.
Thank you, each of you. And I'll ask a few questions here, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I know that many of you have to get back to work here, and we'll try to wrap this up right at 1, but I also want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask questions as well. My first question I want to kind of direct towards Michael. And one of the things that we talk about at the Kentuckiana Works board meetings are when we refer to clients, because clients really they're two different groups. They're the people that we serve when they come into a career center. They're also the employers who are in need. So my question was going to be, do you have a sense, Michael, of what types of programs that we offer through Kentuckiana Works and through these efforts that really does the most effective job in helping kind of skill up people to the point where it's effective for the employers as well? Where's the sweet spot that we're hitting?
So the easy sweet spot is in fields like manufacturing, where the barrier to get an entry-level job is not that high, but a little bit of training can go a long way helping people get those jobs. So we started organizing with employers when Ford and GE Appliances made their big investments around 2010. Louisville woke up, we were not doing much about manufacturing. Employment had been shrinking, suppliers were laying people off, it looked like that wasn't really going to be growing, and all of a sudden when GE and Ford made their big investments, there was this big shortage, all the suppliers needed people, and it turned out there really wasn't much happening in the high schools or in the community college, right? There was only one tiny little training program. So we created something called the Kentucky Manufacturing Career Center, which is a career center focused on nothing but manufacturing. It started with about 5 or 6 employers, and now we've got over 150 employers that are connected to that center and are guiding that work. the National Association of Manufacturers had recommended a 4-week credential that's called the Certified Production Technician. We've modified it, but basically we're offering 3 weeks of training, and in the last 5 years we've helped 1,500 people get jobs in manufacturing through that career center. So if you're a manufacturer out there and you don't know about it, come talk to me when you're done, because we need to get you plugged in, right? There are similar kinds of things. We've got something going on at the Louisville Urban League that's helping people earn a credential in construction. Construction's a little harder because you can earn a national credential, but the construction field is pretty tough to get people to break into. And you run into other problems, David, like transportation, because if you're helping a poor person get into a job so they can get to the middle class, they typically have a pretty shaky transportation system. But one week I need you in New Albany, the next week I need you in Oldham County, the next week I need you in Louisville, and the bus doesn't go there, and it's cost. So you run into those kinds of challenges, right? But where you run into a little bit harder problem, in technology, we've been helping people get jobs in Code Louisville, as I mentioned, but that's typically taking at least 6 months of training, not 3. If you're trying to get people into healthcare, unless you're doing something relatively entry level, it's going to take 6 months to a year. So the challenge you then run into is if you're trying to train adults, they've got to find a way to work and go back to school and manage their family life and pay their bills, and that's a real challenge for people. So,
do you see employers making concessions to try to accommodate that? Obviously, as the job market gets tougher for them to hire, they're willing to do those things. But is there, it's interesting when we talk about soft skills types of programs and general information for people who need to have somebody that directs them into, you need to be presentable when you show up to work, be on time, some of the basic things that many of us were fortunate enough to have somebody focus on. Do you see anything like that on the employer side where they could be more responsive and or take a little bit more of make some improvements to close
so let me
these
unpack
gaps?
that and make it 2 questions.
Okay.
So number 1, on soft skills, particularly with young people, you can make a lot of progress if you just overtly make sure that you're trying to teach them those things. Because again, Oldham County is wealthier than most counties, but you're going to struggle with some poor families as well. The more you get into poor families in Louisville and other places, Bullitt County and stuff like that, a lot of kids are growing up in these single parent families where there may not be anybody getting up and going to work. They're living in a neighborhood where not very many people are working. All those lessons you learned from your dad running that music store and me learning from my dad getting up and going to Ford every day, they just haven't learned. And it turns out you can teach them, although there's nothing better than growing up with that as opposed to somebody trying to teach it to you in 2 days or 4 days, right? I don't want to pretend we can work miracles. But so on the soft skills side, yes, we know how to do that and we can work a lot of success. I want to say one other thing about soft skills. The easiest place for a kid to learn soft skills is in a job, right? Mayor Fisher and the Metro Council in Louisville invest in a summer job program called Summer Works. That is local city money. Right? I've said to all the other 6 county judges, I'd love to be organizing summer job programs for you in your counties, but you have to invest in it locally because there's no federal money for it. So that's another topic we can talk about, but kids learn in a work environment lessons that they can't learn in a classroom or in a little program with me. On the employer side, there are employers who've really figured this out. How do I create pathways for people to start working with me and move up? And Baptist is a good example, Norton Healthcare is another. So in the healthcare field, there are 2 leaders that have won national recognition for creating these sort of grow your own programs with their own employees, right? Where they're spending real company money to generate what they need. The challenge is they know they're going to be in business, they know how many customers, they have a general idea that they can plan long term. A lot of businesses we work with are just so frantic in the day-to-day, it's harder for them to have that kind of long-term thinking, right? Construction companies want somebody right now. I've got a project, I can't, it's that sort of thing. So trying to get them to slow down and think a little bit farther. Construction hasn't been doing much of that, right? Manufacturing hasn't been doing much of that. Right? But that's also where they're losing out on some of this competition because they're not making that clear to them.
Do you see that the environment that we're in right now is creating the scenario where they're starting to get that together from those industries?
Yes, so let me give you a couple of examples. So I got a call, this is the first kind of call I've gotten in 16 years. I got a call from a warehouse and distribution facility in Bullitt County that I think in January is going to overtly tell the public they're interested in hiring people that have criminal backgrounds. So just think about that for a minute. The general gist in 2010, 11, 12 was, look, if you're trying to go to work at Amazon or any of these warehouses, if you got a criminal background, forget it. We can pick other people. This is other people's stuff, not ours. Forget it. Insurance won't let us do it. Now they're coming to me and saying, hey, is there any way you can help us connect to some of these? We know people are overcoming opioid addiction. We know people are overcoming these minor, trivial criminal background things when they were young. They made mistakes. How can you help me connect them? Because we have jobs and we can't seem to fill them. That's one example. There are
Right.
others that we could go over. Think about the GE Appliances thing they just opened, where they're actually now hiring high school kids to work a full shift on Monday and Fridays. They have such attendance problems on Mondays and Fridays, just getting the regular workforce to come to work, that they've now cut a deal with JCPS where kids can go to high school 3 days a week. The other 2 days, they're going to work at GE Appliances. That's how they're trying to solve it. So, I mean, creative companies are getting creative, right? Smart companies are finding ways to invest and to tell their employees about it so that other people figure out how to move up. And just one other thing, companies in a lot of these industries have done a really poor job of explaining how do you move up in this industry. Right? So my guest at the table is a person who works for a nursing home, and we were talking that nursing homes really struggle because they're all looking for CNAs, but many of them don't do much of a job to explain how do you move from a certified nursing assistant, which is the hardest and least paid job in a nursing home, to the ones that pay better. But the ones that are getting ahead of the game are starting to tell that story and make it clear to their employees and the potential employees. So there's a lot of great competition, I think, that employers are using. And some are going to win and some are going to lose. Because, I mean, the demographics are there aren't enough people to fill all these jobs at the moment.
That's great. Well, that'd be a good segue into Matt and the Arvin Center and the local investments our employers make and the communications that have gotten better and better since the Arvin Center has been here and the efforts going. And I know that recently we've met and we've talked with groups of people in various scenarios about, you know, what's the future of this look like. And you're always talking about this starts way before high school. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about how the Arvin Center is partnering with our employers.
Yeah, so part of our growth here, or a lot of our growth here, is because we have conversations with the employers and the students, and we try to package that together, as I mentioned. But putting those things into practice, it's easy for a company or an employer to come in and say, I wish students or young adults had this skill when they walked out of your building. It's very different when that employer walks in and says, I'm going to be in your building and I'm going to talk to the kids about some of the things that Michael was just referencing to and saying, this is how this looks as you move up 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And I also think that we've missed it by not starting at preschool, at elementary age, of having those people come in there. We do a lot in Oldham County for essential skills, and it's all packaged in the elementary age level. It's embedded in the middle school, but it's not intentional. And so as a school district, we are beginning that work. But one of the pieces that we need the most for our middle school and our high schools, in order to have that be intentional, soft skills, essential workplace ethic type certificate stuff, is that has got to become a base. It has to become a fundamental piece that we have people coming in from industry and saying, that's the way that looks. Put it on video. Being in our classrooms on a video and saying, you know what, you want to move up from what you looked like as a 20-year-old to a 25-year-old to what you look like as a 50-year-old, as a retiree from our company. This is what that path looks like, because our kids don't know that. And our educators, as great as we have in Oldham County and surrounding districts, they don't know it either. That's not their business. It's not what they live every single day. And so when we've started seeing that here at Arvin, because we've been at the table with folks and really challenging them to not just say, hey, we'd like to have this come out of your building, but really come in and actually invest in it. So some of it is monetary, but I also want you to make sure that it's clear that it's not the money so much as you're investing in that kid so that in 5 years or possibly in 10 years when they come out of elementary, middle, and high, you already know that student. And that's what's happening with a lot of our programs here. They're doing internships. I couldn't agree more that best training is on the job. And being able to have industry partners who will just take on 2, 5, 16, 25 kids, it pays forward so much. And yeah, there might be a little monetary investment. There's probably some headaches. They are high school kids. At the end of the day, I know Dr. Hayes can attest, I was one of his students while he was principal, and I'm sure I was a pain at times. I know I was. I know my mom and dad would say that. But in the long run, what I got from those experiences and working with my parents and out in the industries and different things like that pays off for me today in my role as a principal of a building. Even if it's not, I did landscaping while I was a high school student. But I use some of those same skills today, and that process really helped me. And I think we've just got kids, Oldham County included, as great as things are in every single school district. There's so much positive going on. But it doesn't mean that we can just turn a blind eye and say, that's the group we got to focus on. This has to be essential skills for every single kid and for every single employee. And those are pretty easy to name. In this room, we could come up with 10 things that every employer would like to have from a kid walking out of high school. Content knowledge excluded.
each of you are going to need them to have their own knowledge. So that's got to be a fundamental base in school, doesn't it? That content knowledge has got to be there. But that doesn't get every single kid a job. It doesn't give every single kid a career. It may be the start of a job, but it doesn't translate in that career. And if we can figure out how to partner with you and industry folks and say, this is what this looks like, and make it really valuable. David shared the other night when we were having a meeting in here, and I'll be really brief, sorry, that the industry folks have been beat up with this workforce and this essentials skills and soft skills, employability skills, name the term because it changes, it feels like, and I'm trying to keep up with all that. But you've had all that put in front of you, and then you're waiting on it to be the outcome that you wanted, what you signed up for at the beginning. So we at Oldham County Schools, and under leadership of Mr. Schultz, and as part of my new duties, we've got to make that valuable for you and for our kids. And I think that's a piece that has been really disconnected on it. You've been asked to do those things, serve on those boards, have those communications, have those conversations, and you've not seen it come to full scope and sequence. It's time for us to do that. And I think the way we do that is in school. I think we start that in preschool, elementary, middle, high school, and then we carry it on as a school district in Oldham County into our community for the 20-year-old who never went to Oldham County schools. If not, we start this in high school, we lose 12 years. What about the people, what happens to those? What about the people who move into our community? So it has to be packaged with workforce backing, with employee backing, and school district support. We're in the business of education. We should be educating your employees on these things if we're going to educate our own students in that same way. So thank you.
Great. I'm going to turn to Christine now. We have a wonderful Oldham County employer, Anapellis Pharmaceuticals. Actually won the best company for the city of Louisville, though they're located in Crestwood, Kentucky. And we're very proud of the work that they do there. And in our interactions with them and trying to figure out how we can capitalize on the amazing work they do, what we have learned is that for the people that work in those fields, the jobs in this region just don't exist. So problems with recruitment when it comes to us going to talk with them and try to help them figure out how they're going to grow their headquarters. I mean, this is a company that's getting traded on the NASDAQ. It's a very important business in our country, much less our community. But to be able to make an accommodation for them in such a way that allows them to grow and put down roots here and grow more of the types of jobs of the people they employ is a very, very tall order. Through the conversations with them, much of the work that they do in their company, they outsource to Germany, to San Francisco, to Boston. And in talking to them about what would it take to get you to grow here, the problem that they have is recruitment. To get somebody to consider leaving the market like Boston or someplace in California to move to Kentucky with all of the perception that might come along with people that aren't from here, also puts in a scenario where it's a volatile industry. So if they go under, there's no jobs for those people to be able to move, and they end up having to pick up their family and move again. So my question to you is, do you see any efforts with some of those tracks, or you could even talk about maybe the IT track, different from, say, the biomed. But is there any efforts that you see that are being effective in the long-term process of actually trying to build some sort of foundation where we can actually attract that type of talent?
I think we're getting there. I think that we're just kind of at the beginning stage of being able to do that. Unfortunately, we're about 20 years behind Nashville, behind Austin, who have successfully moved that needle a little bit more. But I think the first key is to establish Greater Louisville as a brand, to paint the picture of what Greater Louisville looks like, because when we have polled people nationally, internationally, there's really not a ton of awareness about Greater Louisville at all. We might think that people know us for the Derby or people know us for Muhammad Ali. They don't. They don't know us at all. They don't think of us at all. And when they come to visit, they say, oh my gosh, I was shocked. I was shocked at such a great area. I'm so sick of hearing that. I don't want them to be shocked. I want them to come and visit and then move here. The tech problem, the biomedical, that's a difficult spot because, you know, we don't have that talent here. We're not really training for that talent here en masse. Tech talent is something that is going to be needed everywhere for all time. I think there was at some point a disconnect between universities and employers, and universities would continue to pump out their degree programs, and then industry continued to innovate and need something that was different than what the universities were putting out. And for the first time, I would say in the past 2 years, educators and employers are talking to each other and saying, wait a minute, what kind of talent do you need? If we want to keep people here, if we want people to come here, I can make a degree program that suits what you're going to need in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So that's moving forward. We're also, when I'm going out and talking with all the employers, I'm trying to find out what their talent needs are, because we're the ones who are going out and trying to recruit those people here. We're using highly targeted advertising, and this year we targeted tech talent. If biomedical is going to have a bigger impact on the bottom line for the region, we can target biomedical. We do have a lot of assets here to sell. The region is very centrally located. You can get to, 80% of the country in a day's drive. The region has a large footprint, so you can go from downtown Louisville to downtown Middletown to Oldham County, Shelby County, and anything in between. Can't forget our friends in southern Indiana. So we have a lot of assets here. I think it's just we were maybe a little slow to kind of package them and figure out a way to talk about them that's meaningful to talent to recruit.
Great. We have a few minutes left, so I want to ask, you have the ability to ask some questions. Do we have any questions here?
Basically for Kentuckiana Works. Are you doing anything for basic English, and is it successful?
Interesting. So that is not funding that we oversee, but there is adult education. So the federal government invests in adult education, and to the Commonwealth's credit, the Commonwealth of Kentucky also invests in adult education. And so the people that run adult ed do English as a second language. Is that what you're asking about? So for immigrants and refugees, yes? Yes, so it's interesting because there are only really 3 counties in Kentucky, as far as I know, that have a significant number of immigrants and refugees: Shelby County, Jefferson County, and I think Fayette, and maybe a little bit more, but that's where you find ESL programs. The challenge is the state of Kentucky doesn't give those 3 counties any extra money to serve that population. And in fact, they get mad at them for doing it because the money is mainly about trying to help people who didn't get a high school degree get a high school degree. And because the people that oversee adult ed are housed in the CPE, the Council on Post-Secondary Education, their bread tends to get buttered by helping people go to the community college. So the pressure on those adult ed providers is to serve people that don't have GEDs and get them a GED so you can get them into the community college. And so to my colleagues in Jefferson and Shelby County, they basically thumb their nose at their bosses in Frankfort and tell them we're going to do ESL anyway, but it'd be much better if they were getting extra money to serve ESL students, right? Because these adult refugees and immigrants who come here clearly want to work, right? That many of them are required to work if they're refugees, but we often hear these stories where I'm arriving from Syria, I was a medical doctor, but the only job I could find was washing dishes at the Brown Hotel. Right? That's a tragic waste of human resources, right? And some of these immigrants and refugees are highly educated, can learn languages fairly quickly, but the last time I visited an ESL class, David, there were 12 students from 10 countries. And not all 10 Spanish-speaking or French-speaking, so it's a real agglomeration of the world in these little classrooms. It's quite an amazing thing to see.
So where would an immigrant living in Oldham County go to learn English?
So they would go to their adult ed, which I think used to be run by the school district, but I think is now run by the community college, right, Greg?
That's correct.
But I don't know if they do ESL out here. Do you?
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay. So that's where they would go.
Those are located at the Art Center primarily and a little bit of the Range Community Center.
Thank you.
So you guys have learned and have drilled down a whole lot of information that is critically important to workforce in our state. How do you drill that down for the legislators that are pushing curriculum down these guys' throats, which has nothing to do with what you're learning?
So, David, I think this is a real weakness of our current effort that you may have to help me guide as a member of the board. We don't interact with the state legislature almost at all, and it's actually comical. There's a state workforce investment board, that meets quarterly, and they don't really know that I exist, much less that David exists as a board member or what we're doing. I bet if I polled them, they've never heard of Code Louisville. They don't know we've won national awards for the Summer Works program. So we're trying to close that gap, but it's a real challenge. Now, I will say the Commissioner of Education, Wayne Lewis, has visited Jefferson County multiple times. We've seen him. He's visited one of the academy schools. He's seen some of the kind of work we're doing. I don't know if you all have had him here, Greg, or Matt, at the Arvin Center, but so we've had some folks who are coming and paying attention to us and seeing what we're doing at the local level, but it's not typically state legislators, and so that may be something we're really going to have to take on. Because you heard in my comments, I'm not expecting the federal government to invest more in workforce development. If the federal government's going to be running a $1 trillion budget deficit next year, anybody that goes and says, hey, I need more money for my programs is just going to be told to get in line, right? So it's just not likely to happen. So my theory is there are other states, Massachusetts, Texas, Washington, and many others, where the state government has decided, you know what, this stuff's important, and I'm going to stop waiting for Congress to fund it. We're going to try to fund it at the state legislative level, but we haven't even started that process, so we really have to get started on that to try to educate them about that.
The kids that are coming in, and we've all talked about it, the kids that are coming into our businesses to apply for jobs can't look you in the eye, don't know how to fill out a resume, and heaven forbid they have a checkbook.
Well, what I heard Matt saying is they're taking on trying to teach some of these basic skills in the K through 12, but remember, nobody's lengthened his school day, nobody's lengthened his school year. So if you're asking him to teach something else, you're asking him to teach less of something. So that's the thing we have to be real about. And if you're an employer, I'm just telling you, I've been doing this job 16 years. If you want to solve the problem, it's time for you to roll up your sleeves and get involved and get at least a couple kids inside while they're still in high school, inside your employer. And if you do it, that's great. But all I'm saying is I go to a lot of meetings where people want to complain, and then when I ask, what are you willing to do about it, they don't want to do anything.
So Matt, there are things that you can suggest to teach less of? I'll call the guys up at Frankfurt and say, why are you drilling Algebra 17 into a kid who can't fill out a resume? Right. I'll be happy to make that phone call and be a part of that.
Yeah, I think an important point here is that it has to be scaffolded. You're going to have certain students in certain areas of service in workforce that are going to be ready for certain jobs, but you may not be recruiting them for the job that you're asking them to do. And so, kids in Oldham County are getting a lot of these skills built in, embedded in things, and what I was referencing earlier is making a more intentional opportunity that every kid has this piece is coming, but you're also going to be the same employers who are looking for the next steps from that kid. Eventually, that kid that you want to just, let's say as your cashier, the next steps for that kid doesn't want to stay at that the rest of their life. They want this to be a career opportunity for them, and you want them to have that kind of perseverance and that work ethic, and you want them to have that problem solving. So eventually you want them to be the manager, right? So you've got to be able to build that in there. And so I think kids are coming out of Oldham County schools with a lot of the skills that you may be asking for, but we may not be intentional enough saying this is step one. The other thing that happens in education, and I can attest to this, we still are teaching the same subject matter in different ways, but we keep adding and we keep adding and keep adding. So it's not like anything is able to be taken away because the world still expects us to know the same things that we knew in 1980. And now in 1990 we had this, changes and shifts, and then now in 2000 we've had these changes and shifts. And so trying to compress all that, I think, the hours of the day and all that, but we have to figure that out as a school district. And we have to figure that out with partners like you to come in and say, listen, could you come spend a day with me and travel to every single one of my classes and talk to them about shaking hands, making eye contact? Because I can do it all day long. I do it in the lobby, right there in this lobby. Every single Friday I do High Five Fridays to get their eyes up off their phones, look up the adults. Because someday my principal hired me. That's what happened to me. That's how I got in this position, is I was hired by my high school principal at some point in time in my career. And so I talked to the kids about that experience and those things. But one person standing in the lobby can start building that, but you walking into those rooms and saying you want a job in your future, we're losing that in society, in our homes. That's been named in here already today. So where does it have to fall? Not much more can go on the school systems to be expected to do those things, but on the other side of it, if not us, then who? So.
Great. I think that's a good place to stop. I think we could keep going on and on. I know everybody has to get out of here. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to our panel for all the work that you do. It's very important work. I also want to thank May Marks, who is going to come up here and make some announcements. But I also want to point out before May comes up, we're very excited to have May back with us. She did a brief stint away on the dark side.
Hey, now.
I joke. And I hope that you notice that our programming for our chamber, we're trying to align up with our efforts in economic development so that we can build a lot of synergy in this community and continue to do that. And she's a very important part of that.